Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a close look at a really valuable online hub, the 101 Autism website.
Mm-hmm.
It was created by Jor Arbel, who has a deep personal connection to the autism community. And this site is just packed with information.
It really is.
So our goal today is basically to pull out the essential insights, the key stuff to help you understand autism, how it's diagnosed, and the support available. Kind of a shortcut through a complex topic.
Yeah, and what's great about 101 Autism is the sheer variety of what's there. You've
Right.
got personal stories, like right from individuals with autism and their families, that lived experience piece.
Crucial.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then you also have articles that get into let's say, the more formal side of things, diagnosis, the tools they use, insurance stuff, even, product reviews,
Well,
practical things.
exactly. So think of this as your guide.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to explore what the website highlights about understanding autism, how professionals approach diagnosis, and the landscape of resources and support.
Right. Trying to give you that well-rounded view without getting totally bogged down.
Okay, so let's start maybe with just understanding autism itself.
Hmm.
How does the site help with that?
Well, first off, the scope is really broad. It touches on, potential causes, risk factors, but importantly, it stresses that autism looks different in different people.
Right. Not monolithic.
Not at all. And they specifically talk about understanding it in adults and in girls, which is, it's a vital recognition of that diversity within the spectrum.
Yeah, and that diversity really shines through in the personal stories, doesn't it? On the blog section.
Oh, absolutely.
There's this one post from Sar. She's a 17-year-old with autism. She talks about her family, her connection with them, how much she appreciates their support.
Mm-hmm.
And she mentions attending a specialized school. But what really struck me was how she describes the challenges, like sometimes finding it hard to get the words out in long sentences, but also just the huge amount of love and understanding from her family. It puts a human face on it all.
It really does. And those stories, you just can't get that insight from, say, a textbook or a purely clinical description.
No way.
There's another blog post, Embracing Autism, Our Journey Continues. The author is a single mom of an autistic child, and she talks about the incredible support she got after sharing her own experiences.
Wow.
Yeah, it just highlights how important that community connection is, finding others on a similar path.
That makes sense. And I saw another one referencing a book reflecting on the reason I jumped through our eyes.
Yes. That post talks about how that particular book can really help parents maybe get a deeper insight into their child's inner world.
Kind of understanding the why behind certain behaviors or emotions.
Exactly. Building that empathy, strengthening the connection. It's powerful stuff.
Okay, so that gives a feel for the understanding and personal side. Now, where it gets, I think, really practical for a lot of people is the diagnosis and testing aspect.
For sure. And this is clearly a huge focus area for 101 Autism. They've got articles that really try to tackle the most common questions people have.
Like what tools are used.
Precisely. They outline the various assessment tools professionals might use.
Okay, like what? What do they mention?
Well, they go into the social responsiveness scale, second edition, the SRS-2.
Okay.
And they explain it's a rating scale. It looks at the sort of intensity of autism traits, specifically in social situations.
And it's not just one score.
Right.
Yeah.
They point out that looking at the different subscales is important because that can give a more nuanced picture of where specific social communication difficulties might lie.
Got it. What else?
Then there's the ADOS-2, the
Yeah.
Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule, second edition. Big name.
Yeah, sounds official.
It is, but the site actually provides a breakdown of the scoring that's like parent-friendly, which is great because those reports can be full of jargon.
Oh, that's super helpful.
Definitely. And they explain the different modules within the ADOS-2 as well.
Modules. Why different ones?
So professionals can tailor it. They choose the module based on the person's age and how they communicate, making sure the tasks fit their developmental level.
Makes sense.
Mm.
Okay, what about for adults who are maybe wondering later in life?
Good question. They do discuss several online screening tools for adults. One is the Adult Autism Treat Screener, the AQ10. It's a questionnaire you can fill out yourself.
But it's not a diagnosis, right?
Absolutely not. And the site is really clear about this. These screeners can be a starting point, maybe prompt you to think more, but they are not a substitute for a formal diagnosis from a qualified professional.
Okay, that distinction feels really important.
It is. They also mention the IDR Labs Autism Spectrum Disorder Test, another online screener for adults assessing traits across different areas. Same caveat applies. not a diagnosis.
Right.
And they talk about the Haywise autism test, too, which apparently claims a pretty high accuracy rate for an online screener. But again, the consistent message from 101 Autism is these are screeners, not diagnoses. They might suggest if further professional assessment is worthwhile.
So use them as maybe a data point, but not the final word.
Exactly. They also bring up the Embrace Autism test, interesting, because it was developed by a psychotherapist who is actually on the spectrum.
Oh, interesting perspective there.
Yeah. And for the more established tools used by clinicians, they mention the RASS, the Ritvo Autism Asperger Diagnostic Scale Revised, and the shorter RAS-14. So you get a good sense of the different kinds of assessments out there.
That's a pretty thorough overview. Does the site touch on any, challenges or complexities in diagnosis?
It does, yeah. And this is quite thought-provoking. There's an article called Bridging the Gap, The Critical Need for Culturally Neutral Autism Testing.
Okay, what's the issue there?
Well, it points out that many of the gold standard tools, the ones most commonly used, were largely developed and tested within pretty specific cultural contexts, mainly Western ones.
Ah, okay. So they might not work the same way everywhere.
That's the concern. Could there be unintentional biases when using them with people from different cultural backgrounds where maybe social cues or communication styles are different?
That's a really critical point. Wow.
Yeah, it makes you think. And they also tackle a very practical question lots of parents ask. Can a school psychologist diagnose autism?
Oh, yeah, I can see that being confusing. Did they answer it?
They don't give a simple yes or no, but the fact they address it shows that, the pathway to diagnosis isn't always clear-cut. Parents are looking for clarity on who does what.
Understandable.
And one more point on diagnosis they highlight is a disparity. They mention data showing that African American and Hispanic children were less likely to be diagnosed with ASD than white children.
So issues of equity and access there, too.
Definitely. It points to a need for more equitable practices and probably more research into why those disparities exist.
Okay, so that's diagnosis covered pretty well.
Hmm.
What about just living with autism
Yeah.
and the resources to help?
Right. So the site has a whole Living with Autism section. It's really geared towards sharing those everyday experiences, fostering community, providing that kind of peer support.
Connecting families.
Exactly. And then the autism resources section is, it's huge. They list categories like autism schools, latest research, games for autistic kids.
Practical stuff, too, like toilet training kits.
Yeah, toilet training, info on weighted blankets, all sorts of things. It really shows the breadth of support information they try to cover.
That range sounds incredibly useful. Any specific examples that stood out?
Yeah, there's a blog post called Finding Our Place, The Great American City Hunt for Families Like Ours.
Oh, what's that about?
It actually identifies specific cities. They mention San Francisco, Minneapolis, Denver, Rochester, Austin as potentially being really supportive places to raise an autistic child.
Based on what factors?
Things like having good therapy centers, inclusive communities,
Yeah,
strong school resources, general community support. It's the kind of info that could be invaluable if you're considering a move or just looking for areas with robust support.
that is practical and very specific.
Totally. And on a more personal level, there's that post 10 thoughtful gift ideas for moms of autistic kids like my Sarah.
Connecting back to Sarah's story.
Exactly. And the ideas are really thoughtful and practical things like weighted blankets, planners to help with organization. It gets into the nitty-gritty of daily life and needs.
I like that blend of the big picture and the small everyday things. What about things like sensory tools? Fidget toys are everywhere now.
They discuss those too. They acknowledge how fidget toys can be useful sensory tools for some individuals with autism, maybe helping with focus or reducing disruptive behaviors.
But there's sometimes debate about them in classrooms, right?
Yes, and the site touches on that too, the potential for distraction in certain settings. It gives a balanced look, potential pros and cons depending on the context.
Okay. Do they explore other kinds of supports? Maybe less mainstream ones?
Seems like it.
Yeah.
There's a post looking at vetiver essential oil as a complementary therapy. It suggests they're open to discussing a wide range of potential supports.
Interesting. And what about overlaps with other conditions, like ADHD?
Yes, they have an article titled Kids with Autism May Be Diagnosed with ADHD. It explains how some symptoms can overlap, which can sometimes lead to misdiagnosis.
So careful assessment is key there.
Absolutely. Emphasizing the need for careful differentiation by professionals.
Does the site get into aspects of independence, like driving?
It does. There's a guide called Can People with Autism Drive? A comprehensive guide. So, yes, exploring those milestones and the considerations involved.
That's important. And does it shy away from the more challenging aspects?
Not at all. There's a blog post titled Broken Nights and Lost Days Inside World of Severe Autism. It offers a really honest look at the significant challenges some families face.
Reminding us it really is a spectrum.
Exactly, a very wide spectrum of experiences.
And finally, they seem to cover the really practical hurdles too, like insurance.
Yep. There's info on autism insurance advice, and they even identify worst states for autism services.
Wow, really?
Yeah, which really highlights the importance of advocacy and just how much access to resources can vary depending on where you live. It's not just about understanding autism, but navigating the systems to get the right support.
So true.
So yeah, putting it all together, 101 Autism really offers this like multi-layered view. You get the personal lived experience right alongside deep dives into diagnosis, assessment tools, and a huge range of resources.
It really sounds incredibly comprehensive. And for you, our listener, if any of this has sparked your interest or if it feels relevant to you or your family, we definitely recommend exploring the 101 Autism website yourself.
Hmm.
Whether you need detailed info on diagnosis or you're looking for those personal stories for connection or just hunting for practical resources and support ideas, it seems like a fantastic place to start.
Absolutely. And it kind of leads to a final thought, doesn't it, as we wrap up this deep dive?
Yeah. What's that?
Well, given how much our understanding of autism is clearly still evolving, and we see that reflected on the site with new research, developing tools, different support strategies.
Right. How might all this increasing awareness and the better access to resources like this website provides, how might that actually lead to greater empowerment for individuals on the autism spectrum?
Yeah.
And maybe help build more inclusive, more supportive communities for everyone? That's a really powerful question to end on, something definitely worth thinking about.